Hey there folks, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. This is one of those weeks where I feel like there should be more of a punch than there actually is. I mean, there's an album bomb from one of the biggest artists in the industry right now, kind of. And after months of frustration, there's a new #1 that finally broke through this week. That's gonna mean something. Right? Well, yeah, let's start there in our top 10, where we have Stay by the Kid LAROI and Justin Bieber going to #1. I mean, I did call it as the next big challenger, I just didn't expect to break it through the way it did with a sales boost and a streaming surge, and the radio throwing a lot of real weight behind the song. Now, the problem for me is that I think the song's pretty lousy. It's a sloppily produced clunker with lyrics that annoy me to no end, along with the vocals, and coming from two acts that owe their entire careers to the industry. Bieber especially in recent years, and Kid LAROI pretty much always, given all the nepotism that got him here. Now, you would think, for everything I've heard about a certain fan base holding onto the #1 for weeks, that they were taking a stand against the industry, they'd actually gear up to fight two of the worst modern acts from said industry, instead of blocking their own label mate from getting to the top. But then again, this has never been about the quality of the music, but a lot of chart gamesmanship. So unless one of the margins implodes, we're gonna be stuck with Stay for a fair bit. Now, in theory, this would be a good time for Good For You by Olivia Rodrigo to really catch a second wind. The radio is still very stable, and a well-timed sales boost might just do it, but the streaming margin's collapsing, so it's probably too little, too late, at least for now. Then picking up a spot, we got Levitating by Dua Lipa at #3. DaBaby has been officially taken off the song pretty much everywhere, so even as the radio starts its decline, this has just enough to hold its own. But now we've got Butter by BTS at #4. Again, it's not surprising when the sales margin collapsed, this would fall back, but I want to clear something up here. Because a lot of my frustrations with the song, they were never about the band or the song's actual quality. It was more tied to label exploitation from Columbia and unnecessary dodgy sales tactics, and the fact that if Columbia cared to work the song properly, it wouldn't collapse once the sales fundraising from the army slowed down. So it likely would have wound up a lesser, but likely more sustainable hit. Wouldn't have had as many weeks at #1, but it still would have gotten there. History doesn't tend to care how long a song is at the top unless there's something behind it. And you know what, hell, if this song had the proper reinforcement on radio or streaming, if Columbia had done their jobs, it might have been strong enough to block Stay this week, and we would all be better off, because Butter, it's actually the better song. Then creeping up behind it, we've got Bad Habits by Ed Sheeran, breaking at #5. The benefit of stability in all channels, it'll wind up lasting longer even if the song's not any good. And followed by Kiss Me More by Doja Cat featuring SZA at #6, because streaming and radio are still rock solid. Gotta say, I'm a little bit surprised about the radio there. Then we got the expected fall off for Industry Baby by Lil Nas X and Jack Harlow, falling off the debut to #7. They're starting to push it on the radio, but the streaming peak is lost, the sales aren't there. But you know what, holding up steady behind it, we got Montero, Call Me By Your Name by Lil Nas X at #8, where it's declining on the radio, but not all that quickly. Then there's Deja Vu by Olivia Rodrigo, getting an unexpected boost to #9. Radio still really likes this. And then scratching back into the top 10, we got Save Your Tears by The Weeknd and Ariana Grande. It's also on its way out, more due to losses around it and streaming being remarkably stable. That's how it got back into the top 10. But around this territory are losers and dropouts this week, and where there are some notable ones in the latter categories. Wants and Needs by Drake and Lil Baby comfortably clinches its year-end list spot for 2021, and what will likely fall just short, we've got Settling Down by Miranda Lambert, Gone by Dierks Bentley, and Ski by Young Thug and Gunna. Also Brutal by Olivia Rodrigo, but without a real push behind it as a single, not surprising. But you know what, given it's an album bomb week, we did have a fair number of losers here. Disappointingly, You Should Probably Leave by Chris Stapleton lost all the gains from last week down to 89. Blame It On You by Jason Aldean continues to fall off at 75, as does Wild Side by Normani and Cardi B. Man, that song did not catch on at all. Then off the debut, we had If I Didn't Love You by Jason Aldean and Carrie Underwood crash crashed down to 52. Don't Go Yet by Camila Cabello hit 63. Not Sober by the Kid LAROI featuring Polo G and Stunna Gambino at 77. And Over the Top by Smiley featuring Drake at 78. The rest are characteristically scattered. Fiel by Los Legendarios, Wizen, and Jay Cortez hit 97. Hats Off by Lil Baby, Lil Durk, and Travis Scott fell down to 94. I'm frankly shocked it lasted this long. Happier and Favorite Crime by Olivia Rodrigo fell down to 93 and 86 respectively. AM by Neo Garcia, J Balvin, and Bad Bunny hit 85. Ball If I Want To by DaBaby continues to be rotated out at 73. And Single Saturday Night by Cole Swindell looks like it's getting rotated out by Nashville Radio at 40. Now the two songs I want to highlight though are Permission to Dance by BTS at 27. Again, sales are pulling back, and with nothing fueling it, it's falling. And Way Less Sad by AJR at 81. Which honestly, I thought this was going to be a hit. I'm kind of surprised that it stalled out. Now, as expected are the returns and gains, they're a lot smaller, and Billie Eilish is the main focus here. Outside of Outside by Mo and OG Bobby Billions climbing back again at 98, we saw Billie bring back My Future to 91 and Lost Cause to 84, and when we go to the gains, as expected, NDA rebounded to 59. But that's still not a lot of activity here, and if I'm at her label, I gotta start seriously questioning the rollout strategy that left this album bomb really underperforming. Outside of those, not much in our gains. Waves by Luke Bryan's getting one last push for the summer at 35. 2055 by Sleepy Hollow continues to rack up gains at 53. I Was on a Boat That Day by Old Dominion also kept rising to 64. And then off the debut, Pepas by Farruko got some traction at 66. I mean, I'm not sure if it's gonna last, but I'm happy at least it's getting some sort of momentum. It's a Latin song that I actually really like. But since Under My Rules, Billie Eilish did not get enough charting entries to qualify for a proper album bomb, I gotta cover all of them, albeit briefly. I did already review the album at length on its own. And that also leads to a reasonable number of new arrivals here. Surprisingly starting with number 99, From the Garden by Isaiah Rashad featuring Lil Uzi Vert.
Came out buzzing, 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 came out buzzing. Wait.
You know, I was legit shocked to see Isaiah Rashad chart on the Hot 100 for the first time in his career off of his most successful charting project to date. Yeah, we all know why it's here. It's because Lil Uzi Vert contributed a guest verse, but it's one of those cases where he's using his bizarre popularity for good, so I'll allow it. And yet, man, I wish this song was good. Or you know what, let me rephrase that. I wish this was interesting. Isaiah Rashad has always had a hedonistic side, so I'm not surprised it runs through his triplet flows with all the sex and brand name references, even if he's got that undercurrent of quiet desperation and maybe even depression that runs through the song. But it feels like a tinge of what makes him interesting in comparison to playing off the bass-heavy trap groove with the limited tune that drops in off the opening sample. Honestly, this is the sort of hype song with Uzi dropping his standard verse, which feels a little bit interchangeable. And you know what? While it's pretty well produced, it's gonna go off live. I don't know. I'm just not sure there's enough here that will entice folks to want to hear more from Isaiah Rashad. And that's a little disappointing. I was hoping for more. Number 96, You Time by Scotty McCreery.
65, but sometimes I need just a little bit of me and you time, you time, you time. Oh.
Alright, look, I've been rooting for Scotty McCreery longer than I probably should have, but I do think he's a really talented singer, and he's knocked a couple songs right out of the goddamn park. I was intrigued about this, even if it's coming off of his next album, which is literally called Same Truck. I hate to say that was a bad sign for this, which unfortunately just winds up kind of generic. The shuffling drum machine pattern playing off the more liquid guitar lines, the over-polished slickness of a lot of the mixing and mastering, especially of the backing vocals, the increasingly basic boyfriend country crooning, of which Scotty McCreery is more charismatic than most in the field. And indeed, he keeps the song generally likable, but man, you can tell this is what a label executive swore would sell for him. And given his label situation, I just know he can do better. I mean, it's not bad per se, but I'm gonna forget this in record time. Number 95, Gyalis by Capella Gray.
But she gon' slide right to my side, I know. She pulled up with her friends, then we skirt off in the Benz, oh.
Okay, seriously, what's with all the juvenile samples going around recently? Has his catalog suddenly gotten way cheaper to sample from? Well, anyway, this is from a Bronx rapper who seems to be catching a bit of TikTok virality for a song that can't even crack 2 minutes. And yeah, you can tell this is more fragment than fully composed track, with no real hook as our frontman meanders from singing to rapping to back to singing again, in a lot of ways that remind me a lot of both Drake and A Boogie with the Hoodie, with a lot of patois to boot. Now, I'm not denying he's got a pretty decent voice from beneath all that auto-tune, but it's stuck behind some really cruddy bass mixing as well. And I gotta say it, I'm not really enamored with the content either, where he's trying to play the big bad boy Casanova type by stealing girls, and I'm just not sure he can sell it just yet. This is one of those songs where you can really tell Capella is signing this guy on potential and New York buzz, and well, the fragment's not precisely bad. I've heard worse in this lane. I'm gonna need a little bit more before I take it all that seriously. As it is right now, not all that impressed. Number 90, HALLEY'S Comet by Billie Eilish.
Comet comes around more than I do.
I'm gonna try and keep this pretty short with the Billie Eilish songs, especially as I already said, I already reviewed the album at length, but even with that, there's just not much to really say about this one. A pretty sweet, but kind of sleepy, intimate, piano-driven, distant love song with a slightly more basic composition that even with the change-up and the touches of guitars, it doesn't really help the album's momentum, and I don't really think the song stands alone. Again, it's fine, but it's probably one of my least favorite cuts from the album. Most of the time, I just skip it. Not bad, not great either. Number 87, Baddest by Bleu, Chris Brown, and 2 Chainz.
Gave you all my love, that shit been at now. We should get away somewhere and run it up.
So hey, remember Bleu from that song with Drake that he had earlier this year that also wasn't any good? Did you remember that he dropped a project just fairly recently with this seeming like the one song that managed to pick up some traction? Well, of course it did. It's a collaboration with Chris Brown where he opens up by calling the girl a sexy motherfucker in the opening lines, and lyrically it actually goes downhill fast from there, mostly because it's another watery trap song trying to rely on a very aggro appeal where Bleu tells the girl not to give him any attitude or his dick will get soft, even as he says he's going to fuck her angry despite being in a good mood, and then he comes so fast by the end of the verse that she has to duck and cover. By then you're almost grateful that 2 Chainz will show up to embrace the silliness of all this, where he says that her booty's sticking out, they gotta walk around it. I mean, he seems at least kinda to get the vibe that he's actually treating these women to a good time, whereas Bleu and Chris Brown are trying way too hard to be macho unironically, where Bleu pretty much admits he's only getting attention because he's now successful and rich. Boy, can't imagine why. The problem is that our leads clearly think they're being way smoother than they are off the watery groove and the trap knock and all the overcompressed vocals. Somebody please get Chris Brown with an engineer that can actually give his vocals some space to breathe normally. So it's just not really as fun as it could be. Just kind of winds up crass and clunky. Not really offensively bad, but it is embarrassing. And it's not good either. Number 80, I Didn't Change My Number by Billie Eilish.
I'm out of sympathy for you. Maybe you should leave before I get too mean.
This is one of those songs on the album from which I wasn't quite sure how to process at first. I knew I liked it courtesy of Billie playing so well off the spare atmosphere and the pulsating bass off the spare drums, but the jittery warble of melody coursing around her that ramps into a more angular shudder, kind of an odd choice, especially with as many samples of her dog growling across the song, which really does amplify that sense of deeper unease. But you know, when it comes to being a breakup song, it is kind of effective. She doesn't have to change her number to fully drive home to her ex that she's pissed off and she's finally listening to all her friends who called this guy bad news. It's this really nervy, anxious, but effective song. Not quite a personal favorite from the album, but still really quite good, especially in the context of the album and its flow. But I gotta say, what I like more is number 72, Oxytocin by Billie Eilish.
You don't really need a break. I wanna see what you can take. You should really run away.
You know, for as much as Billie Eilish showcased more open sensuality as a part of her image in this album's rollout, it was the sort of thing I didn't really feel the need to discuss. The music is ultimately way more important, it would just look really weird for me doing so. And yet with this track in particular, it's kinda hard to get around, because not only is it the central theme of the content, but wow, she made this sound hot as all hell, with her breathy vocal layering playing off the stalking bass and the jagged percussion, which hits the precise balance between being sexy and bone-deep creepiness as their distorted shouts lurk around in the background. It reminds me more of the gothic side of trip-hop, or the brittle edges of modern house, especially with that stuttering echo of synth. And you know, I mean all of that as a compliment. This is gonna kill live at an evening festival set or any nightclub. Just a great goddamn song. If you're not shipping this to the dance charts yesterday, Interscope, make this a single. It'll clean up. Number 70, Billie Bossa Nova by Billie Eilish.
Look at me when you're alone. Won't take a lot to get you going. I'm sorry if it's torture though. I know.
I think I like more what this song does in context rather than the actual composition itself. It's a pretty spare, guitar-driven lounge track with clip percussion and a very languid feel that could fit very well as hotel elevator music, especially with all the hazy swells of backing instrumental. But you know, it kind of makes sense. This is a song where she's describing the anonymous hotel hookups that she had to indulge on while being on tour, or the seedy allure, it's part of the point. And Billie Eilish is a great enough performer to make it pick up some legit smooth jazz smolder, especially as the piano slips in again for the outro. I will say it's not really a go-to for me coming off the album, but I do like this a decent bit. As well as number 69, Getting Older by Billie Eilish.
Just keep me employed now.
There's a lot going on with this track that I really like. Yeah, it's a song that details her frustrations growing into newfound fame, and now she might someday wind up bored with all of her success in the industry that keeps her employed. All the folks who will never sniff her level of fame just threw up a little bit in their mouths. But, you know, the fact that that picture includes stalkers, the disconnect that comes with everything sounding rehearsed given how much time she's had to spend on camera, and literal abuse within the music industry, yeah, her tired trepidation makes some sense. Especially when it comes with the reality that one's own artistic passions will change naturally over time. But I don't know, I will say the very spare twinkles and beat behind Billie Eilish don't really do much to elevate the song's composition. For an album opener, it's a very slow burn, and it feels like it's missing the proper climax to push it towards real greatness. Still a really good song, but I do think it could afford to be just a little better. That's all I'm saying. Number 37, Volvi by Aventura and Bad Bunny. You know, I'm not surprised that Aventura is back with Bad Bunny here. They've been trying to recapture that crossover success a few times now, and reportedly this was a strong selection, and man, I wish I could agree with that assessment, but there is not much I like about this song. For one, the production cannot get away from the stock, stiff-sounding percussion, only accentuated by the staccato guitar plucks, which doesn't even really flatter Romeo Santos or Bad Bunny, even across a few of the moments where the percussion really ramps up to drive the accent. And I can't even say I vibe with the content either. Again, I'm probably losing something in the translation, and I won't deny there's some poetry to Romeo Santos' clinginess to want this girl back post-breakup, but then Bad Bunny comes in a lot more aggressively, and it's the same sort of steal your girl machismo that really doesn't work or come across as all that attractive, especially from Bad Bunny, who should know better, especially when you realize he's talking to an ex who is with someone else. And wait a second, Romeo Santos says on his second verse that money isn't everything, but then he wants to flex about getting back with Aventura, which seems to be playing in the exact same territory of flexing? I don't know. I get why the melodrama might have some sort of appeal, but I was not a fan of this on a compositional level. Let's move on. Number 14, Skate by Silk Sonic. About damn time we got another song. No idea if or when Silk Sonic's gonna drop a proper album. Even if I get the sneaking suspicion it'll either be a surprise drop at the end of the Grammy eligibility window this year, or delayed until the next year because this will win Grammys. But I did love Leave the Door Open, and this follow-up is performing well. And let me start by saying it's a ton of fun. I absolutely get why some might say this is better than their first single, but I'm not sure I agree. For one, they swapped out retro soul for retro disco, albeit with the impeccably organic approach to the lush backing arrangement, that bass groove, and the textured drums and congas. And in terms of the content, well, it's literally what it says on the tin. Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak trading some cheesy one-liners as they try to pick up girls at a roller rink. Now, it is pretty damn good in that environment. These two are way too charming to fumble this, and how the bridge slips across the keys, it is utterly sublime. But I don't know, for me, the song feels a little bit limited in its scope. Maybe this has to do with some of my own research into disco, and how so many folks would make a lot of weird novelty pivots out of anything in that era if they could get away with it. And this kind of feels like it's in that territory. Even with roller rinks coming back in, it does feel a bit niche. But you know what? Novelty songs don't have to be bad, and this is a lot of fun. And yeah, Silk Sonic nabbed another really damn good song. You can drop the album anytime, gentlemen. I'm waiting. And finally, number 11, Happier Than Ever by Billie Eilish.
I'm happier than ever. Wish I could explain it better.
And we're ending off with one of the best songs on the album, currently primed as the next single, but I gotta be honest, this is a song that should be better than it is, and it actually comes down to the production, specifically of the electric guitar that crashes in for that angry final payoff. Maybe we've actually found the limit of what Phineas can really do at this point, but that tone feels blown out, fuzzy in the wrong ways, and blocky without the real explosive punch it needs. Now, Billie Eilish can mostly sell it vocally. She's got the pipes to drive home some righteous fury and the charisma, and the slow build-up across from vintage, soft-focused acoustics into something with some real roaring intensity. It's an impressive crescendo, and likely will satisfy that Interscope executive that hopes that Billie Eilish can compete with Olivia Rodrigo in making pop rock. And you know what? Just how much she airs out the toxic, selfish recklessness of this ex, it feels cathartic as hell. But again, a little more raw firepower all around, that would have sealed the deal, and I'm not sure it's quite there just yet. Still, great song, and if it's gonna be a single, well, you know what, I still like NDA and Oxytocin more, but I'm fine with this. And you know, while we're on that subject, this was actually a pretty damn good week. Oxytocin is getting the best, but Skate by Silk Sonic is handily taking the honorable mention. It was right behind, and I was tempted to tie it with Happier Than Ever. It's really close there. Now, worst, I wouldn't even call them outright bad so much as deeply embarrassing, but Baddest by Bleu, Chris Brown, and 2 Chainz is easily taking the worst of the week, with Volvi by Aventura and Bad Bunny as a dishonorable mention. I just could not get behind that production there. It did not work. Next week, well, the fallout from all this, so stay tuned for that. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.